Hi, it's Dre Griggs with Sitting Wisdom. Which would you choose if you could choose between funding your kids' college or funding your retirement? This question I get a lot, and most of the time we're like, hey Dre, is there a way I can do both? And sometimes there is. It just depends on how flexible you are with the budget, but I give you the numbers either way, and then we can make an intelligent decision. There are some people that feel, as a part of their generational wealth strategy, if I can get my children through college without any expenses, then I've already created generational wealth, which is true. If you're able to do that, imagine if you had a college degree where you can get paid a certain amount of income in a certain type of job, but you didn't have the debt. So they had a lot of flexibility when it came to what they could do with their money. And if you're able to give your children that head start, believe you me, it will put them in an amazing position. But it doesn't quite answer the question of whether it's the right decision. When you hear me talk, most of the time I'll talk about feelings and facts. Feelings and facts. I believe if you want to win any argument, you have to have the right combination of both. If you only talk about facts, you come off as callous and indifferent. If you only talk about feelings, then it's sometimes not even realistic, but it just feels really good. So we're not going to be in this utopian world, but we're also not going to be in a world where everything has a dollar sign next to it. Some things we can do that doesn't make financial sense, but it feels good inside. And I think that that's fine. But when it comes to answering this question, I always start with the numbers because I just want you to make an informed decision. When you're determining what the impact will be, I'll say, all right, cool, let's go ahead, let's look at the numbers, let's see what it looks like. So let's say you're 35 years old, you make $100,000 a year, and you're gonna invest about $1,000 a month, right? So $12,000 a year, we get about an 8% return, and we will say that, hey, you know what, I'll live off of about like 70% of this income, we'll pay off the house and the different debt, and so that'll be about like $4,300 every single month is what you'll need in retirement. If we have an 8% return and you would do the math, that means that we would have $1.97 million if we invested $1,000 every single month. We average an 8% return from 35 to 67. Now you may be asking, Dre, well, what number did I need to be able to live off of that 4,300 that we were looking for? And I'm glad you asked. If you were not counting Social Security, that number would be 2.8 million. So you need 2.8 million to be able to live off of that 4,300 every single month. And then the assumption would be that we'd have about a 5% return post-retirement. So 8% leading into retirement, and then we have the 5% post-retirement. You can already see based off of that by itself, you're already short about $1 million if you just followed that strategy. But we're gonna say, you know what, let's not even worry about what the numbers we're gonna try to get to. Let's just go with the simple what we would have had. We would have had $1.97 million if we had invested $1,000 every single month from 35 to 67 and then got an 8% return. College is about like $30,000 a year is where it's about averaging. It goes up and it goes down whether you're in state or out of state, whether you have scholarships of some kind. I mean, it really fluctuates on the type of school, all that, and I get it. But on average, nationally, it's about $30,000 a year. That number goes up about 6% every single year. It's kind of crazy. So if you're estimating about $30,000 a year, then we would say, all right, that means if, 30,000 times 4, I would need $120,000 to be able to fund my kids' college. So if you were to say I need $30,000 a year, how long would it take you to be able to get to that? And then what type of money would we be looking to allocate? So if we said, all right, I'm going to go ahead and put this money aside, Dre, so I can put like $12,000 a year, and then, maybe they'll cover the rest, or maybe we could take out a loan and we could work with them. We can make some adjustments. All right, cool. So let's just say that the $1,000 that you're going to put towards your retirement, we're just going to put that towards the kids' college. So we'll just keep it a straight, clean swap. So we're not going to increase your budget at all. And if you do that, then what we'll say is, let's just assume that you did that for 5 years. So instead of you starting your investments at 35, you'll start them at 40 years old. So if you started them at 40 years old, $1,000 every single month, just like we said, 8% return leading up to it, you would end up with $1.25 million. So you can see it costs you about $700,000 of your retirement income because you came 5 years later and invested the same amount. Now, is that worth it as far as your kid's college? And you may say, Dre, I'm cool with $1 million in retirement, and my kid is going to start off on a great foot, so I feel really good about that. But the question that I have for you is, what about reverse generational wealth? Now, you may say, Dre, I'm not sure what reverse generational wealth is. Well, reverse generational wealth is this idea that we don't have enough money saved for retirement. So what we end up having to do is our children end up having to fund our retirement. Now, granted, we raised them, we did amazing things for them. I'm sure they don't mind doing it, but is that the plan? Was that your goal? Was your goal to require reverse generational wealth where your kids had to fund some of your retirement? And most of us would say, no, that wasn't the plan, Dre. Now, for those of you that are curious, for the math, Dre, what would I have to invest from 40 to 67 to get that 1.9 million that we're going for the first time? And I'm glad you asked. You would actually have to invest about $1,600 every single month from 40 to 67. So that is an additional $600 that you would have to invest. And if you took that $600 a month, times it by 12, that would get you $7,200. And you times that by the 27 years, then that would be $194,000. So you would have had to invest an additional $194,000 over the life of your retirement investments to be able to get the number that you originally had. And so when you think of it from a math perspective, what did you end up doing? You actually ended up taking $1,000 a month times 12 months, which is $7,200, times the 5 years. So you took about $35,000, right? Just about $35,000. And that investment in your kids' college cost you an additional $194,000 over the rest of your retirement life. So if you look at it from that perspective, then you'll know why what I'm about to say is what I'm about to say. I often will tell people, and it's slightly outside the box, so just hear me out. And then if you agree with it, do it. And if you don't, no problem. But what I often tell people is the money that you put in, if you put it in now and you allow it to invest, this beautiful thing we call compounding interest happens, where your money, as it stays invested, it starts growing exponentially, right? If you were to look at Berkshire Hathaway, you'll see that it was pretty much flat for like 10, 20 years, like flat. And then it just exponentially went up. You find that if you look at most of these companies that made it big, right? You know, Apple, Tesla, right? You just go down the list. You can see that they're kind of doing this, and then exponentially went up. Your retirement fund is the same way. You have to have your money invested for a pretty significant amount of time. And as you continue investing in it, something magical happens where you're making a lot of money. And it just keeps exponentially going up as you get closer and closer to retirement. Because of that, I often tell people, look, how about we invest the money in the retirement now? Let's make the plan to see if we can get these kids a scholarship. And if the kids can get a scholarship, then we're good. If the kids don't get a scholarship, they can take out loans, and then we can help them pay the loans back. We can help them pay the loans back, right? Nothing says that if the kid gets the loan that we can't help them pay it back out of the growth that we have. We have all this money, so now it's not us working and trading our time for money. Now it's us using money exactly how we want to. Money is supposed to be something that we share our values with. So if we want to encourage our kids to go to school, and then we use the money to help them pay for their school, that is a benefit that we're able to offer. In fact, you'll see that a lot of retirees that have their retirement like set and they feel really good about it, one of the things that they struggle with is knowing when and if they can spend their money. And so that often is something that plagues them. We're like, man, I wish I took more trips or set up more things for my family. But if you have the money set aside, sure, pay back the college student loans for your kids. Pay it back, right? Like, just tell them, hey, look, you pay the same $1,000, I'll pay $2,000 every single month, and we'll do that together. And if they're sitting there and they're kind of like, all right, that sounds really good, you'll be like, all right, cool. Or if they're in a rough spot, you'll be like, hey, don't worry about it. I'll make those payments for the next 12 months or something like that, or I'll make just the next 1 month payment. However you want to do it. When you have the money, you have the flexibility. And so for me, I always encourage you guys, let's get the money so we can have the flexibility. Once we have the money, we can then decide what to do with it. If you want to take a trip in retirement, great. If you want to buy your kid a car, great. If you want to take them on, college visits and pay for your grandkids, all fantastic. But let's get the money first. The problem with you investing the money at the beginning is you've now taken away your ability to earn with that money. So if you instead you invested the money and then you're able to spend the earnings from the money, you still have the principal of your money. But if you take the money and you don't invest it and you just give it to the institution, well, now they invest it in their endowments and then they grow the money for their university, for them to buy things with the interest and the growth of their money. See, colleges, they do it the same way. You rarely see them just spend the money and then they have nothing left. They have either recurring income from donors, from college and kids coming in, or their endowment, the people who run their investment funds and grow the money that they currently have. They spend from the growth that they have. They don't spend from the principal. You and I have to have the same philosophy. We cannot be spending from the principal. And I do think it's an important lesson to teach my children, and maybe you'll agree and you want to teach your children, but it's the idea that everything has a value. And if everything has a value, then we can decide whether it makes sense for us to buy it or not. And sometimes things make sense to buy today that doesn't make sense to do tomorrow. Sometimes things make sense to do in 10 years that doesn't make sense to do today. But you get to make that decision. Now, for those of you that feel that you want to be able to do both, where you want to be able to put something for retirement, you're not going to cut it off cold turkey, but then you also want to be able to invest for your kids' college in some way, shape, or form. For those, I often will say we can play around the margins. And so what we may do is you may simply say, look, all I can do is the $1,000 a month. So let's put $250 towards, my kids' college, and then we can put $750 towards my retirement. Some people will want to flip it, where they want to put more money towards their kids' college in the beginning, and then they'll make it up on their retirement at the end. If you're someone who has that perspective, then I often will tell people, the beautiful thing about your retirement is you can kind of play with the numbers. You can adjust it. So, and what I mean is you can say, all right, well, I was going to retire at 67, but what if I just work an additional year or two? Because if you work an additional year or two and you put like 70% of your check in your retirement fund for those last couple of years, then you can make up the difference, right? Like you can play with the levers where you say, all right, I'll work a couple extra years or I'll invest a little bit more. You may say, you know what, I don't have to live off of $4,000 a month like I was originally thinking. We're going to focus on getting out of the debt. We're going to move to a lower cost of living place, whether you're going to go to another country or whether you're going to pick a state with a lower cost of living. You may say, all right, I made adjustments on my expenses, so now I'm able to make adjustments on how much I need. There are so many levers that if you are saying, you know what, Dre, this is a deal breaker. I have to be able to invest for my kids' college, and I'm not going to take no for an answer. Then we would make the adjustments to the plan for you to be able to achieve that goal exactly as you had designed it. But as all things, there is a cost, and whether you want to pay with your time or whether you want to pay with a little bit more money, there is a cost. And as long as you are aware and making a conscious decision, then we can really put any plan together that works for you. I'm curious your thoughts. What did you think? Which would you choose? Would you want to pay for the kids' college first or the retirement first? Leave your thoughts in the comments. If you found value in this video, I simply ask that you like and subscribe so you can continue receiving valuable insights on how to unlock generational wealth through strategic retirement planning.